Good evening. Welcome to another edition of Scotland at 7 on the 4th of February. My name is Gordon Ross, and here are tonight's main news stories, starting with the coronavirus update. As of 2 o'clock today, a total of 1,585,559 people in Scotland have been tested through NHS Scotland labs and the UK Government regional testing centres since the beginning of the pandemic. Of these, 1,402,141 were confirmed negative, whilst 183,418 have tested positive. There are 1,149 new confirmed cases of COVID-19. This, of course, is an underestimate of the number of cases, since not everyone with the virus displays the symptoms. Not all those with symptoms will be tested. There were 53 new reported deaths of people who have tested positive. The number of patients in Scotland who have died from complications caused by the coronavirus COVID-19 infection now stands at 6,322. This number only includes those who have died having received a positive test for the virus in the previous 28 days. Of the people who have tested positive, 1,812 were in hospital last night, 127 of whom were in intensive care. And 694,347 people have now received their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccination, and 9,031 have received their second dose. The latest UK daily figures published today show that 110,250 patients who tested positive for COVID-19 have sadly died from their illness, an increase of 915 since yesterday. This number refers to deaths in all settings and not just hospitals. And now the main points of tonight's news. Vaccinations in Scotland have hit a record number for a third day in a row. So for the third day in a row, there has been a record number of vaccinations in Scotland, with 45,085 carried out yesterday, vindicating the First Minister's claims that the vaccination programme was on target and would speed up now that vaccinations in care homes had exceeded a 98% vaccination rate. Meanwhile, the SNP Shadow Health Secretary, Dr Philippa Whitford MP, has called on Boris Johnson to explain his misleading claims on care home vaccinations after official statistics from NHS England contradicted his claim that every eligible person in a care home had received a vaccine. Yesterday, in his Downing Street briefing, the Prime Minister said that every eligible person in a care home had received a vaccine. Today, the official figures from NHS England show that 90.9% of eligible residents of older adult care homes have received the vaccine. The real figure could be lower still, as media reports suggest that this is only a percentage of eligible residents in those care homes visited, rather than a percentage of all residents in all care homes. Dr Whitford said that Tory attempts to play politics on the vaccine rollout have backfired after it emerged that Scotland is outstripping the UK in care home vaccinations. In Scotland, 98% of residents in older adult care homes have received the first dose of the COVID vaccination. In addition, 92% of residents in all care homes, 89% of staff in older adult care homes, and 77% of staff in all care homes have also received the first dose. And now news of a £33 billion investment in Scotland's future. Significant capital investment in healthcare, education, transport and the environment over the next 5 years has been set out. The Infrastructure Development Plan, the IPP, and the Capital Spending Review, both published today, confirm a 5-year plan of investment which will support 45,000 jobs and build healthcare facilities, schools and local facilities across Scotland. A further £2 billion has been added to the plan since the draft version was published in September. And new funding announcements include £110 million for digital public services transformation, £50 million for active freeways, and £60 million for climate adaptation of the trunk road network. The plan also outlines investments including £2.3 billion for healthcare, including the £204 million additional funding for the Baird Family Hospital and the Anchor Centre in Aberdeen, as well as the Grampian, Perth and Kirkcaldy elective facilities, and £67 million for the provision of a new health and social care community hub in Parkhead. A further £2 billion for education and learning facilities, including a new day centre primary school and a new Gaelic school in Glasgow, with up to £90 million towards the Dunfermline Learning Campus. There's also significant investment to strengthen connectivity across Scotland, £600 million for the R100 programme. around £1.5 billion towards transport, including £550 million for rail decarbonisation, over £500 million for bus priority, over £550 million for active travel infrastructure projects, and £287 million for the Future Transport Fund. There are also measures to support climate adaptation, include £150 million of additional funding for flood risk management and a £12 million sum for coastal change adaptation. And now to news of the Vote Leave takeover of the Tory Union Unit. The SNP has said that the Vote Leave takeover of Boris Johnson's anti-independence campaign has spectacularly backfired and will drive up support for independence. After Dominic Cummings' arch-Brexiter ally Oliver Lewis was installed as the new head of Downing Street's Union Unit, Kirsten Oswald MP said the decision showed that Johnson is completely clueless about Scotland and raised questions over the use of public money. 20 consecutive polls have now shown a majority for independence in Scotland. Commenting, the SNP's Westminster Deputy Leader, Kirsten Oswald MP, said, "The Vote Leave takeover of Boris Johnson's taxpayer-funded anti-independence campaign has spectacularly backfired and will drive up support for independence even further. By installing Dominic Cummings' Brexit apprentice as the head of the so-called Union Unit, the Prime Minister is demonstrating, yet again, that he is completely clueless about Scotland. This botched Tory plot also raises serious questions over the misuse of taxpayer funds for political campaigning. It's clear the Tories are using public money to build a party political campaign team in the run-up to the Scottish Parliament elections. There must now be full transparency over how much is being spent and for what purpose." And now to plans to cut universal credit risks. There are plans to cut universal credit risk turning more people to food banks. The SNP has said that the Tories must U-turn on cruel plans to cut universal credit for millions of families, as new research revealed that cuts could risk 1 in 5 people turning to food banks. The research published today by the Trussell Trust also showed that nearly 250,000 parents worry that they won't be able to properly feed their children if the £20 boost to universal credit is cut in April. The report comes after the Tory government failed to oppose plans to cut the universal credit uplift in a vote. While the SNP voted against the cut to universal credit, Scottish Tory MPs abstained, despite Douglas Ross previously opposing the cuts. The SNP has repeatedly called on the UK government to confirm that it will make the uplift permanent and extend it to those on legacy benefits such as employment and support allowance and job seekers allowance, who have now been left behind without the equivalent support for 10 months now. Many who claim legacy benefits have disabilities and long-term health conditions and have faced higher costs throughout the pandemic. And now to the Scottish fishing industry. And the fishing industry has slammed Brexit chaos this week. The SNP has called for immediate action from the Tory government to sort out the customs mess affecting Scottish fishing and seafood exports after industry representatives told Westminster Scottish Affairs Committee that it may not survive. Deirdre Brock MP accused the Tories of being behind the wrecking ball that is smashing through the Scottish fishing communities and demanded immediate action to sort out the crisis, which threatens the industry's future, including a grace period. Deirdre Brock MP, the SNP's shadow DEFRA spokesman, said, "It's clear that the wrecking ball currently smashing through the Scottish fishing communities and destroying businesses and jobs was made by the Tory government. When the Prime Minister and his cabinet are smug about taking back control, they're ignoring the problems they've caused. Industry voices are clear that there was plenty of time for the UK government to set a workable system in place, but that simply was not done, and we're seeing the damage caused by that now." At the evidence session, none of the industry figures saw a rosy future for the industry, and there is a possibility that there is no future unless something changes. It's time Tory ministers swallowed their pride, got back to the EU to get that grace period and started looking at an agreement on the future arrangements that will allow Scotland to export its produce. The UK government must take responsibility for the EU visa scandal and U-turn. The SNP has demanded the UK government takes responsibility for abolishing EU touring visas, comparing them to petulant wains during the Brexit negotiations. John Nicholson MP has urged the UK government to take accountability for their abject failure regarding touring visas and to reverse its damaging decision. SNP MPs and musical icons, including Elton John and Liam Gallagher, have repeatedly called on the UK government to ensure that musicians and performers are on the list of workers permitted to enter the EU without a visa to prevent sky-high costs for artists and fans. It was revealed that during Brexit negotiations, the EU offered to include this in the deal, but the Tory government rejected it on the grounds that they would have to reciprocate. Now to Ireland, and Dublin and the European Union have rejected a call to scrap the Northern Ireland Brexit Protocol. The Brexit Agreement's Northern Ireland Protocol will not be scrapped, the Irish government and the EU have said, in an escalating row over new trade barriers down the Irish Sea. The Democratic Unionist Party leader, Arlene Foster, has called for the measure, designed to keep the Irish land border open, to be replaced. But Dublin is focused on easing problems with the post-Brexit trade deal that have caused the disruption at Irish ports. The Irish Foreign Minister, Simon Coveney, told BBC Ulster there's not going to be a very dramatic change in the face of calls by the DUP for the protocol to be urgently axed. We want the protocol to function in a way that works for everyone, north and south, on the island of Ireland, he said. Foster hit back on the same programme, accusing Coveney of being completely tone-deaf to the concerns of unionism. On Wednesday, the European Commission Vice President, Marcos Šefčovič, said that the UK and the EU had shared a commitment to the proper implementation of the protocol. He tweeted that this had been reiterated at a meeting with Michael Gove, Foster and Northern Ireland's Deputy First Minister Michelle O'Neill on Wednesday night, and they had agreed that constructive solution-driven cooperation was essential to addressing outstanding issues. The EU made it clear last night that it regarded Article 16 as an ultimate on which it would not capitulate. Gove and Šefčovič will meet again next week. And now to austerity. And austerity is the wrong choice, says the German finance minister. The German parliament must decide in the coming days how to finance continuing measures to soften the impact of coronavirus. The finance minister Olaf Scholz said when asked if the so-called debt brake must be suspended next year. The Social Democrat, who is his party's candidate to succeed Conservative Chancellor Angela Merkel in a national election this year, was asked if the totemic constitutional borrowing ceiling should be suspended for a third year in a row. In the coming days, we will have to decide very concretely on how we deal with the new challenges, he told the German public broadcaster Deutschlandfunk on Thursday. We're very glad to have a good healthcare system. It would be crazy to cut that. And it would be economically wrong to adopt austerity politics and cut investment. So the question is, how do we mobilise the funds that we need to have a good growth path and to promote social cohesion, he added. And now to the Best Start grant, and 150,000 Scottish families are now supported with the Best Start grant. Nearly 150,000 Scottish families have been supported by the Best Start grant introduced by the SNP Scottish Government. The figure was confirmed by Social Security Secretary Shirley-Ann Somerville in the Scottish Parliament when questioned about the Best Start grant by the SNP MSP Gillian Martin. Ms Somerville went on to highlight that more than £45 million worth of support has been given out to Scottish families since the scheme was launched in 2018. The Scottish Government research also found that these payments have taken financial strain off families and stopped some falling into debt. Commenting, the SNP MSP Gillian Martin said, "It's a true testament to the goals of the Social Security Scotland that so many families have been able to receive the support they need to help children get the best start in life. I was delighted when I heard in the Scottish Parliament that more than £45 million has now been spent by the SNP government on providing to families who need it most. The pandemic has put a strain on family finances, and these payments will be a welcome relief for many." The United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child Incorporation Scotland Bill, which will ensure children's rights are protected, respected and fulfilled, was introduced to the Scottish Parliament in September 2020, and the general principles of the bill were unanimously passed by the Parliament in January 2021. The Scottish Government has now lodged amendments to the bill, and one amendment gives certainty to the legislation that the legislation will commence automatically 1 year after receiving royal assent. with flexibility for ministers to commence provisions earlier. A second amendment makes changes to the definition of public authority for the purposes of the legislation. As drafted, the bill provides that it is unlawful for public authorities to act in a way which is incompatible with the UNCRC and gives children, young people and their representatives the power to go to court to enforce their rights. If agreed, the amendment will mean that anyone undertaking functions under a contract or other arrangement with a public authority will be obliged to comply with the legislation and will be directly responsible and accountable for ensuring children's rights are respected. The amendments will be considered by the Equalities and Human Rights Committees at Stage 2. And now focusing on completing courses, moves to ensure that students can complete their college and university courses this academic year are being explored. A task force comprising representatives of colleges, universities, students, unions and government met today to consider the challenges that colleges and universities face in delivering practical learning as a result of the current COVID-19 restrictions. While the issue impacts on both sectors, colleges are adversely affected given the predominance of practical learning. The immediate priority for the task force is to help students to complete their courses and to move into further study or employment. The task force will consider arrangements if some students need to defer a part of their course. Further, Higher Education Minister Richard Lochhead chaired the first meeting. And now to Wick Airport. The Scottish Government is making a significant financial commitment to help reintroduce flights at Wick Airport. Up to £4 million will be made available to the Highland Council over the next 4 financial years to bring back services to and from the airport. This funding will help the Highland Council to take forward plans for public service obligation routes in consultation with local communities and businesses. The Cabinet Secretary for Transport, Infrastructure and Connectivity, Michael Matheson, said, "We recognise the issues faced by the Caithness area with the loss of flights to and from Edinburgh and Aberdeen, so we are pleased to announce significant funding to help reintroduce flights to Wick Airport. This will allow the Highland Council, in partnership with key stakeholders, to take forward plans for public service obligation routes. And I'm in no doubt that they are best placed to determine the services that are required by their communities." And that, I'm afraid, is about all we have time for this evening on Scotland at 7. I will be back again tomorrow night with the programme. But before I leave you, just a reminder that we are still in the middle of a major crowdfunder and we are determined to be here through all the major events of 2021. So if you'd like to help us in that endeavour, you can do so either by becoming a regular supporter of Scotland at 7 and Broadcasting Scotland, or you can make an individual donation, or indeed you can volunteer if you wish. Anyway, that is about it from me this evening. All it remains for me to say, as from all of us here at Scotland at 7, a very good evening to you.
The Catalans, the Basques, the Galicians in the Basque.
An independent future for Scotland.
How quickly do you think a referendum can be arranged?
Best practice demands that it should be 6 months.
Just looking at the overall share numbers for Scotland at the moment, the SNP 46.4%.